Hello there. So I'm wondering how life is with you. And I'm going to share a bit about how life is with me. So at the moment in the heavens we have the Sun, Mercury, Mars and Black Moon Lilith all in Scorpio. 4 planets in Scorpio means time to dive deep and go into the inner work, and the Sun moved in to Scorpio about 3 days ago. So that's what Scorpio is about, diving deep, going into the feelings and delving into matters that you may not have really given a lot of attention to before. So my journey all began by witnessing an argument which was overflowing with psychic violence, and the two people that were having the argument were very much triggered by each other, and the negative energies were coming out to play, and there's lots of hostility. And I didn't realise this at the time, but that's actually the first time in a long time that I've been exposed to such a thing. I'm very blessed, and as much as I don't get much of that in my life these days, the drama is something that's far away from me and those that I spend my time with. So that was the first thing that happened. And I realised it was a powerful clarion call for something. Wasn't quite sure what exactly. And then on Wednesday, 2 days later, today is Saturday, so 2 days later, I took part in the sound healing in St. Margaret's Chapel, which was hosted by Virginie. And a very powerful experience it was indeed. And at one particular point she invited us to make sounds that perhaps we were prevented from making as a child. And I found myself adopting a really kind of open posture, making some really strong sounds. And then a little bit later she asked us to connect with the Mother and to make sounds with that connection. And this is what really shocks me, because it's never occurred to me before, but in terms of nurturing and love, the one that took on the role of the mother in my childhood was actually the family tomcat called Wulla. Now Wulla displayed his most extraordinary devotion to the family when we went up to the bus stop to get a bus to the local town. And he came with us. He would quite often do this, he'd come with us. So he crossed the road with us and we got on the bus. And when we went home at the end of the day, of course, we arrived at the bus stop on the other side of the road, and it didn't occur to any of us that maybe we should be a little bit more aware, but we weren't. We just went home, thought no more about it. And then gradually, as we noticed he just wasn't there, we were very puzzled. We didn't put 2 and 2 together until the following Monday, and there was Wulla waiting at the exact bus stop where he'd left us on the Friday. And so that to me was a very powerful indicator of his devotion to us as a family. And for me very personally, it was something very different. Whenever I got ill, had any one of the many childhood illnesses which were common in those days, there would become a point when I would have to go to bed because I was too weak and exhausted. And from the moment I got into my bed in the daytime, Wulla was aware that there was something that needed to be done. And from that time onwards, he would camp out on my bed, curled up on a ball, within easy reach for a stroke or just to look at him. And that was how I spent my childhood illnesses. And he would get up to go and do his business and have something to eat and be back super fast. So from my point of view, he gave me that unconditional love, that caring, that attention actually. That's what I felt he was doing. Maybe to an outsider coming into the room, they would simply see a cat asleep on the child's bed. That's not what I experienced. I experienced mothering from him. And that then brought up various other things too. And I then remembered that when we moved from one part of the country to the other when I was 11 and my brother was 9, something happened very shortly before we moved which is, again, Wulla couldn't be seen. And when we asked Mum what's happened to Wulla, she says, well, I've had him put down because we're moving house. Now, the thing is, my childhood, and particularly around about that age, 10 to 11, was so full of absolutely unspeakable horrors that this had always seemed like such a minor, minuscule, tiny detail in life. It never occurred to me that perhaps there might have been some reason why a big flash of righteous indignation and anger flowed through my entire body when I heard that news, and how I actually felt completely betrayed by this woman who thinks of herself as my mother, because she just killed the one that had actually done the bit that really mattered to me most of all, which is being there for me and loving me. I don't want to get this wrong. I want to be very clear. I had an enviable childhood in so many ways. I was brought up by two parents. Neither of them were alcoholics. No one had a drug habit. They were not swept away by some hideous fundamentalist religion which caused them to inflict torments on their children. None of these things happened. It was a fairly normal childhood, except for when I was taken away and the unspeakably horrible things were done. And it only took place between ages 10 and 11. But there was the other thing, which is go back to the Monday, the violent argument, the argument with all that psychic violence and drinking. That did happen a lot during my childhood, during our childhood, and my brother and I, we always knew that all we had to do is when it started, we had to go away and hide. It was very important not to interact, not to fuel the drama, not to feed it by offering any judgments or opinions, but to get the hell out and hide and remain in total silence. That's what I learned to do. And so I'm sharing this with you because sometimes it's very easy to focus on the really big dramatic things that happen to us, the major traumas we experience in our lives, and certainly my life story has been coming to terms with them and understanding them and their role in my life. So I was very surprised to realise that my very mundane upbringing actually had its side which I needed to be willing to look at. And after a very long period of no communication, one of my cousins in Australia reached out to me, and we started communicating, and she sent me some images on Messenger, and she said, I'm going to send you some photographs, some family photographs. And I thought, well, if anyone ever wants to give me anything, I have a very golden rule. I always say yes. It doesn't matter what I feel about it, what might be triggered, just always say yes. I said yes, and thank you very much. Well, this box has been sitting in this house since before I moved in. I opened it today, this afternoon, and I'm about to dive into the next part of my journey. So for me, it was witnessing the drama, anger, psychic violence, followed by the sound healing, and getting these very surprising epiphanies about who did what. So again, I want to make it really clear, my parents were excellent because they provided for me. They were not completely lost in some horrible cult or some horrible substance. They were there, and they made sure that we were fed and we were given all the basic things that we need. But because of their own horrific traumas, they were not able to be parents. They couldn't do the love bit because their own wounds were so severe. So in the case of my dad, there's two things. One, when his father died when he was 7, his older sister did something which seemed very kind. On the day of the funeral, she took him away and they watched a cinema film together. When he discovered it was the day of the funeral, he was absolutely furious. And I know just what kind of fury it would be. It was the kind of fury that would have gone right inside. He wouldn't have been able to express it all. Because it meant that they robbed him of the right to grieve at the passing of his father. So that was one trauma. It was a big one for him. Second one, he was 11 years old in hospital with a broken leg. In those days, they used to tie a rope around the broken leg and hold it up in the air like that. And you'd be like that for weeks in hospital. and he was listening to the news, and it was very clear that this is World War II, and it seemed almost inevitable what would happen is that the Nazis would invade England. So this was his other moment of utter nameless terror. And these two things did dominate his life, because he would speak about them sometimes, rarely, but just enough to realise. And as for Mum, well, she had some real serious trauma to deal with, like coming home at the end of the school day to discover the house has been burnt to the ground and there's nothing. It's all gone. Just imagine that when you're a little child. Something else, her mother either had rampant psoriasis or full-on schizophrenia, either one or the other. So actually the one who brought her up was a sister, her older sister, who she hated because her older sister brought her up with lots of rules and commands and thou shalt nots. And again, there wasn't any love there. So I just wanted to share that, just to give you the backstory. So I'm sharing this because I am already being approached by people in these times, when we're diving deep, going in with Scorpio, 4 planets, Sun, Mercury, Black Moonless, Mars, and also the Moon as well. Forgot to mention the 5 actually. So it's a very strong time. The Moon, of course, moves very rapidly, so only present for a couple of days. So that's what's going on in the bigger picture. So my question is, what's going on for you? Are you discovering things about your life that you haven't recognized before? Are random events affecting you, like with me, or are you deliberately going to some kind of a healing event for the specific purpose of better understanding yourself? I'd be very interested to hear what's going on for you, and thank you very much. And what I will do, I will make another film after I've been through this lot. I expect to be pretty severely triggered. However, we'll see how it goes. Okay, all love to you.